Coming up on The Buck Stops Here.
Most executives believe because they haven't paid for an AI platform yet that AI isn't in your business. And that is completely wrong. Absolutely 100% incorrect. If you haven't built an explicit AI sandbox, your employees have already built one and they're using it right now that you don't even know about. Governance is basically a seatbelt. It's the thing that if you don't have it and you hit a fast curve, you may be thrown out of the car. If you hit a wall, you're definitely going through that windshield. And it simply means knowing what tools are being used, what data's feeding into them, and who's responsible. I've said this over and over and over again. If the tool is free, you are the product. They're either selling your information to someone else or they're training their AI models on this. And these models have a voracious appetite for new and novel data. And once that horse is out of the barn, you can't undo it. If you have an AI governance document, it's a competitive advantage for you. You can tell them with complete confidence, oh, we have an AI governance doc. We've already thought about this. You just taken something and made yourself literally a vendor of one. Welcome back to The Buck Stops Here. I'm your host, David Maples, and today I want to talk about AI governance. I have an episode called Why Being Small is Your Superpower, and I talk in that episode about breaks creating speed. What I have noticed is that business owners, and myself included in some cases, we are going a million miles to nothing and we have no breaks. I'm going to try to make this entertaining. I'm going to talk about AI governance, and AI governance is literally like reading software instructions. It's like reading people their terms of service. It's like, oh, we need to talk about not the fun stuff about how your company goes fast. We need to talk about the brakes you need to employ so you don't hit the wall at a curve going 200 miles an hour. And what I have noticed with many, many business owners, I would almost say without exception, I have seen very few companies who are employing what I consider a responsible governance program, a responsible way in measuring and handling the different things you're using AI for in your business. So I broke this up into two parts. I'm breaking it up into two parts for a very particular reason. Part one is for the executives. If you are running a team or you're in charge of a team, or it's just you're a solopreneur, this first episode is just directed right at you. I believe this is important to go into the next episode. The next episode is going to deal more about how you do this when you have a team of people, how you present it. And we're going to focus a lot on the human element as we go through this today. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of what I consider the illusion of control. Most executives believe because they haven't paid for an AI platform yet, or an enterprise AI platform, that AI isn't in your business. And that is completely wrong. Absolutely 100% incorrect. If you haven't built an explicit AI sandbox, your employees have already built one and they're using it right now that you don't even know about. Now, for you, if it's just you and your company, what you have to understand is that unvetted system may be you. Like, you have to start, like on the Buck Stops Here, we've always talked about how you need to eat your own dog food. You need to look at how you're using these systems and you need to apply it to yourself first. How do you expect to lead others if you haven't even followed the rules you're telling them yourself? You know what people hate worse than just about anything else is a hypocrite. So I have an entire other episode talking about shadow AI, but here's kind of the stripped down definition. It's the unauthorized use of public or free artificial intelligence tools and or browser extensions, whatever it is, to do work in your company that has not been approved. You don't have IT approving it. You don't have executive approval doing it. And the thing I want to redefine about governance for everyone listening out there is it's not kind of corporate red tape. It's not a 50-page manual that, frankly, those 50-page manuals kill innovation. I want you to innovate. I want you to do these things. But governance is basically a seatbelt. It's the thing that if you don't have it and you hit a fast curve, you may be thrown out of the car. If you hit a wall, you're definitely going through that windshield. And it simply means knowing what tools are being used, what data's feeding into them, and who's responsible when and if a mistake happens, because they will. The minute you start using these tools, any AI tool that has an error rate of 1%, if you use it enough, you're going to have errors. And the question is, do you have systems in your company to make sure that happens? it's generally not malicious. Most employees are not trying to steal your intellectual property. It's usually driven by very high performers who are looking for extreme productivity. Sometimes it's driven by lazy performers who are looking to have baseline productivity. But the reality of it is, it's like 4 p.m. on a Friday. You've given an employee like a 3-hour data sorting task, or they need to write like a massive proposal or something like that. And a free browser tab can supposedly do this in 2 or 3 minutes. And this really comes down to human nature. Human nature dictates that they or you will take the shortcut. Now, I'm using the proxy right now in what I'm saying to you, so you understand I'm really talking to you. This is going to happen to you and your company, okay? Employees are using their own tools and they're bringing their own tools. Remember like 15 years ago when the smartphone was just coming out? Maybe 2007, 2008, whatever it is. I don't remember when the original iPhone came out. But during the smartphone era, initially companies would always give you a phone. They would give you a phone to use in the company. Some companies still do this, but by and large, a lot of companies don't do this anymore. The challenge with that is that there's data compliance, like what's on that phone. Do they take it with them and they leave? There's all these problems with it, right? But right now, employees are paying out of pocket for things like Claude Pro or GPT Plus or Anthropic Max or whatever it is, just because the company isn't providing the necessary tools they need to stay productive or competitive, right? And that's two problems there. Number one, they're doing stuff that you probably, if they're paying for it on their own, you probably don't have a right to look at that stuff. So you actually need to be paying for these tools yourself. Number two, you don't know what's going in there. You don't know how they're doing that. And there's also this other problem, is that the confidence trap. When you look at AI and how the systems work, there's a lot of danger with the human eye interacting with AI. Bots lie, make up something, call it what you will, but they say it with absolute unwavering confidence. I could send you 1,000 videos where somebody's asking ChatGPT something and it makes something, it says something with absolute confidence. And there's a massive dangerous temptation for humans to outsource your critical thinking skills to the machine and assume that whatever's telling you is right. And the reality of it is that oftentimes it's not. And it's not as good as the work you would probably do yourself. It may be a shortcut, but it's a shortcut to an inferior work product. And if it's not, then ask yourself why you're here. If you can't produce work that's better than that or whatever it is, that's kind of a massive problem right now. So the first step I'm going to tell people to look at is that there's a knee-jerk reaction that a lot of CEOs will do. And I'll talk about this in the next episode as well. So the initial knee-jerk reaction is to ban the technology. I'm gonna do this and no one's gonna use it. And blocking OpenAI or Anthropic on a company firewall just doesn't work. They're just gonna move to using it on their personal phone. Remember, it's only wrong if you get caught. The reality of it is that it's not as simple as that. You need to give them tools and you need to give them frameworks to work within. But you can't just shift from no to yes. If you want to spend your money wisely, you want to say, use this here. And you want to follow the leader with this. Market leaders are paying for commercial or enterprise levels of the tools because they come with some kind of contractual guarantees. So the first thing you're going to have to do for what you're trying to work with in any AI situation is you need to get an inventory of how it's being used. So since this episode is focused on the solopreneur or the executive, here's what you need to do. You need to outline what ways you're currently using AI. Now, if you're not using AI, let's start on the other side of this. What tasks do you do on a daily basis and whatever your job is? And then you want to look at those tasks and you want to say, hey, it looks like I can remove or do some of these with AI. Which ones provide the best return on investment, et cetera. And we'll have other episodes where we talk about how to really help yourself in doing it. But when we talk about governance, you need to figure out what tools you're using right now, and what the terms of service on those tools are. So not fun, but are you using the free version of Gemini that comes with Google Workspace? Are you using the free version of Copilot that comes with Microsoft? And by the way, Copilot is probably the worst of all these tools. Like, you're not only using some, but you're like, oh, it's free. It comes with a Microsoft account. And it only seems magical if you're not comparing it to the better tools. Once you use better tools, you're going to be like, oh man, it's hard to believe that was great. It's like the first time you ever had a hamburger, you went and got something really, really cheap and you're like, oh, amazing hamburger. And then you go look at something that's been prepared at home and you're like, oh, that's amazing. If you've never tried the more amazing thing, you don't understand that you've been eating an inferior product for a long time. Might serve the use that you have applied, but it can definitely be a problem there. So what you want to do is, first of all, is you want to sit down and take your own inventory. How am I using AI in the company? What am I using it for right now? And then what tools am I using? Are you using GPT? Are you using Anthropic? Are you using Gemini? Are you using the free versions? Are you paying for something? And the other thing you need to look at is a whole bunch of the software as a service tools you've been using in your business forever. A lot of them have like this sparkly little icon now. That's an AI tool. So here's my question. What are the policies and procedures around that? Are they training on your proprietary data? Are you putting in data that's exposed? And the thing is, this doesn't have to take hours of your time. Just write down a list of these tools. See how they're using AI. How is the data being processed and how does it need to be used? And then what you can do is you start with yourself and you say, these are concerns. I didn't know what these are. And then you write a policy for how you're going to use it. If it's just yourself, you're probably highly unlikely to write your own policy for you to use it. I want you thinking about this so you can be intentional about your use of these tools. No BS here. I want you really to be thinking about the intentionality behind what you're doing. A lot of people do something. We follow the leader strategy, but a lot of things. Social media. Everybody's doing a TikTok dance because everybody's doing a TikTok dance. Ask yourself, does that line up with your goals and objectives? Did it then? If it does now, I don't know what you're watching. You're watching old TikToks. But the reality of it is that find out, ask yourself why you're using this. Sometimes you're using it just to play around. Acknowledge that. But don't do that when a deadline's coming in. I've seen a lot of people try to use Canva to help them build a presentation. And then they find out they could have built the presentation on their own from a template as opposed to using some AI assistance tool in a much shorter period of time. They spent 3 hours, get really frustrated because they couldn't get AI to generate the right images or whatever it is, or people without 5 fingers or 3 heads or whatever it is. By the way, that's all dated. Most of that stuff's been fixed now in the better tools. But why are you using a tool that's taking you more time than you could have just done on your own? Play with it, not when you have a deadline. And here's the one thing I've noticed. We're turning more to these tools when we're under a time crunch. Confession, I've used AI for things when I'm in a time crunch and had very, very bad outcomes. I'm not going to detail exactly what they are today. That'll be a different podcast. It'll be like the AI confessional. Maybe I'll get like 6 CEOs in a room and we'll all talk about like ways we've done really stupid things. But when you're under the pressure, if you're under the gun, that's an extra layer of complexity. You're much less likely to check your work. You're much more likely to make a mistake. You are more likely to assume what it is telling you is correct without analyzing it and applying your own critical thinking skills to what it said. And that is a road to ruin. It is a path to failure. Because if it's making a mistake 10% of the time and it was something important, your financials, your taxes, an HR decision, something you were doing, and you literally made a mistake, the problem is you. It's not the AI, it's not the tool. The buck stops with you. If that mistake happens, and it will, when you use these tools enough, this will happen to you. And I'm trying to keep you from going down those dark and dangerous roads alone. If you're enjoying the show, please help us not keep it a secret. Subscribe, rate us a 5 stars, and help us keep the lights on and keep the message going. Whether you're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you're enjoying us, your support really does matter. If you've got a story or a resource we missed, please tell us in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Now, back to the show. So you have to figure out how you're using these tools. When it's not like using a word processing tool, although it might be now with some of the Microsoft Copilot stuff. But if you open a text document on your computer, you're not putting sensitive client data into free AI models, which you're actively training. I've said this over and over and over again. If the tool is free, you are the product. They're either selling your information to someone else or they're training their AI models on this. And these models have a voracious appetite for new and novel data. And once that horse is out of the barn, once you have literally done that and put that out in the world, you can't undo it. You're like a comedian that everyone's recording on their iPhones and you say the most horrific thing on stage. You can't rewind the clock. But if you have built a time machine, please reach out to us at the Buck Stops Here. I'd love to talk to you more. But that being said, you have to start with yourself first. You need to analyze what tools you're using, and you need to write up documents for how you want to use them. And this will go into our next episode as well. This absolutely will go into what you're doing with that. So you want to stop banning things you're doing. You want to start sandboxing. My thing is that you don't want to be trying an untried tool on opening night for your play performance. To make this clear, every theatrical performance in the history of mankind has a dress rehearsal before it goes live, unless it's improv, because improv, part of the joy is there is no dress rehearsal. But those people practice a lot. But for anything that you're doing out there, there is kind of a dress rehearsal. And so for AI tools, what is your dress rehearsal? The dress rehearsal is you need to test it on something else that's not system critical. Then when you don't have that pressure valve happening, you don't have something boiling over, you're not reduced on time. You turn to things you can trust with 100% reliability. You don't try something you've never used. If you're managing a professional baseball team, you're the manager of the Chicago Cubs. If you have a guy who has a on-base percentage of 500%, and you're in the postseason, you do not take the rookie you just brought up from a AAA ball team this week and put them in your lineup. If you do, you get fired the next day by the team owners. The problem is a lot of us are doing it. It's okay to play with it in a sandbox environment. What you want to do is you want to sandbox these things or use them in a play environment where the stakes are not as high. So realize that that is how you need to approach using AI. Okay. At some point, you need to realize there is a supply chain squeeze that is coming. I'm going to explain this. So what this means is that right now, if you're bidding on a contract, a lot of people aren't seeing this. Someone will ask you later down the road when you're bidding on a contract for your AI governance framework. It's like any cybersecurity document or something else. If you're going on to a certain contract of a certain size, people may ask you, how do you generate the information? What do you do with this? And how is my data being used? And if you don't have that information, or you're like, oh, we have an entire document on how we do this. If you have an AI governance document, it's a competitive advantage for you. You can tell them with complete confidence, oh, we have an AI governance doc. We've already thought about this. And that is a strategic advantage versus your competitors. If there's 5 of you bidding on a project right now and someone asks for an AI governance document, only one of you got it. The other people are like, we have to go work that up. And then I'd say, oh, we've already thought about that a lot because we work with clients just like you all the time. And we think it's important for you to have the confidence to know how your data is being used. You just taken something and made yourself literally a vendor of one. You're going to be the go-to vendor because you've already thought about doing that. If you can't prove that your data and handling of the client's proprietary information is secure, you will lose that contract to a competitor who can and does. So the next thing I want you to think about and really incorporate into your thinking about your governance is that the AI bots hallucinate and they lie with absolute confidence. I've said that earlier, but I want to kind of go through that and make sure you really understand this. They hallucinate and they lie with absolute confidence. And probably just as important, they can persuade you to a way of thinking because they are incredibly sycophantic in nature. That is telling you what you want to hear. You need to be very careful. If you're bidding, so think about what they don't have in context. They didn't have the meeting with the client. Now, there are ways to possibly work around this. You could basically record a meeting with clients and based on all this context, what should we do here? Is the AI bot reading a transcript of that meeting? Because that's very different than inflection. Because if somebody said something sarcastically in the meeting, the transcript is going to miss that. Because most of the transcripts, there is no intonation or intent behind the words. So when you ask a bot about what you should do in a situation, you have to realize that is kind of like asking somebody who wasn't in the room, who there is no back and forth with it on. So imagine if you had someone in your company who had no idea about the particular application you've done, and you just want to pick their brain about how would you handle this situation. Now, the way you handle this with another human being is you would go back and forth a lot, say, no, you didn't really get that. No, he said this, but he wasn't really serious about that. We don't use the AI bots like that. I've yet to meet anyone, and I'm thinking about how I need to be doing that differently too. I've yet to meet anyone who's asking a bot the way you would talk to another human being about a decision-making thing. Yet we are ceding our authority and our critical thinking skills to that. And this may say like an anti-AI. I'm absolutely not. But you need to realize that it will tell you that in a completely sycophantic way. I totally think you should do this. This is absolutely the way you should go about it. As an attorney, one of the questions I get sometimes is when you should hire an attorney. If the issue is clear, you probably don't need an attorney. Attorneys work when there are questions or concerns and controversy that we do not agree upon. We work in that area of gray. And the AI doesn't really know how to deal with gray. It will basically spit out an answer unless you've prompted it to give you the pros and cons of each or argue both sides, and then you're still left with the same thing. What should I do? You're outsourcing your request to a very, very smart and well-meaning toddler that will wholly make up things and tell you what you want to hear because it means they're getting an extra candy bar later. You cannot outsource your critical thinking to a machine. I think you need to establish a strict zero tolerance policy that no AI generated legal documents, client facing copy, marketing or otherwise, any AI generated code. That's a little bit easier said than done because there's so much of it. But none of that is published without being thoroughly reviewed, fact checked, and owned by a human professional. This is one of the big things you need to think about is the ownership. Now, I understand as we're moving into the agentic era, people are allowing agents to go out on their behalf. I think you have to really limit exposure on those environments to make sure that if it is posting stuff, you have brakes to put in place. It's kind of like the stock market has a breaker they trip when all the stuff starts to go into free fall. If the stock market starts to lose a ton of value overall, all trading gets suspended. You need to have a suspension element in place. That's easier to said than done, but at least a way to look at it. Let's say you give an agent full access to your X or Twitter account and it gets into a flame war with other people. And before you know it, it's posted 20,000 posts on X. That is very hard. You think it's bad to be a comedian on stage and say the wrong thing with smartphones? You just lit up 20,000 direct message feeds. I guarantee you they took screenshots of all that and are going to put you on flame. So the reality of it is that you need to make sure that you have some kind of circuit breaker in place or a way to test it and a way to make sure these things are at least audited on some regular basis. So in short, in this episode, what I want you to really think about is I want you to get a list of tasks you do on a daily basis. You want to look and see how you're using AI for these different tasks, and you want to look at all the software pieces there. You want to figure out what they are. Now, by the way, for most companies, there's probably 5 or 6. If you're using software as a service, there may be like 10 more. Just go in there and you want to find out what their policies are on how your data is shared. Is it confidential? Is it private, et cetera? What happens if that company sells? Does it stay confidential or private? That's a good question. And it's not always immediately obvious, but you want to go look in the mirror and start with yourself. The problem is you. You want to see what ways you're using AI and do you have guidance on it? How many helpful summarize or grammar tools currently have permission to read your screen while you're in, a CRM or banking portal? That's just one off the top of my head. So if there's a document right now or you're in a browser window, it's like, summarize this information for me. If it says that and you're on a web page, that means it's been reading that confidential information on that page. Are you in your CRM or banking portal? But you want to ask yourself this away so that you don't fall into your own trap here. And then now you can go to your team and say with complete confidence, this is how I am addressing my use of artificial intelligence in the organization. This is what I am doing on a regular basis to make sure that I am doing this in the way that's correct for my company. And I'm going to go ahead and just say that. I want to put a big asterisk next to that. Correct is not correct in this grandiose way of doing things. Correct is correct for your company and your appetite for destruction and your appetite for risk. Correct means correct as to your application. You have very different rules if you're in a particularly regulated industry, for example, legal, healthcare, financial. You have different rules and different people you have to answer for there. That's very different than if you're just in one of the trades, you're an electrician, or maybe you're an architect. There may be professional guidance and rules based on that. I remember years ago, I was talking to a mental health therapist, and it was funny, something I didn't even think about. And I just talked to a mental health therapist a few weeks before, and they were talking about getting Google reviews. Therapist A didn't even think about this. They're like, oh, yes, I'd love to use your tool to go solicit reviews. Therapist B said it is unethical based on the rules of my profession to go solicit patients for reviews. And that is 2 different therapists in the same industry and the same geographic region. And they had very different answers. They had very different answers to that question. So you need to find out what your appetite for risk is based on your industry and what you're doing. And that is actually probably one of the most important pieces I can tell you about. You want to audit your personal tech stack this week. And then once you've done that, you can look at your team and say, hey, I've already applied this to myself. The next episode in particular is going to lean heavily into how you broach this with your team. How do you talk about this? How do you get them to admit what tools they're using? And then how do you put the policies and governance in place in order to make sure that you've at least protected yourself? How do you have an AI governance document that you can generate and give to people once you're doing it? And by the way, there are AI governance document frameworks on the internet. Don't just take someone else's. You need to build your own, because what matters is your appetite for risk. Someone else's AI governance document, and I see this all the time with things like terms of service. They'll rip them off somebody else. I literally had somebody send me the terms of service they'd gotten from another website at one point in time and said, here's the terms of service. I said, did you guys write these? Like, no, we took them off XYZ. And I was like, is that the same kind of company you are? Well, no, that was a big problem. And it seems obvious now to say it out loud, but the reality of it is people do that all the time. It's the path of least resistance. We as humans get lazy. You can't get lazy on this, because if something does blow up and you hit the wall going 200 miles an hour, how do you recover from it? And I'm not trying to end on doom and gloom. I think this is an amazing opportunity for your company. I think it can provide amazing benefits into how you promote what you're doing and how you become more competitive in the marketplace. I firmly believe that this is going to inform everything else you do. It's going to help you have a better understanding of what do you need in your next hire, over what do you need to put in that job description, over how do you want to change your company. If you've not started rewriting your job positions based on AI, it's time to start. This is a little bit of a digression, but one of the biggest things companies are getting away from is a normal interview. Right now, a lot of companies are doing a try before you buy program. If you find somebody you kind of like, because everybody can fake an interview using AI now, but you don't know how they're going to work in your organization. You don't know what their interpersonal skills are. You have no idea if they can actually do the job. There's a system called Cluely, which allows people to cheat on their interviews. That's why the guy got kicked out of school, and why he's got a company right now that's being seeded by a whole bunch of venture capitalists, because people are willing to pay to cheat. So one of the biggest things right now that's really exciting for companies is they're bringing people in, you pay them for a week. In San Francisco, they're flying people out to San Francisco for a week. If you're a small company, maybe you can afford to do that, but you could definitely try someone out for a week and see if they work out. You hire them on a temp basis. And in a week, you pay them no matter what, and you decide if you think they can do the job. You give them all the tools that you have at your disposal and tell them to use those tools. If you haven't analyzed the tools you're using, you can't even do that trial basis. My company's looking at that right now, like how we would use that and try someone out for a week, give them access to all our tools, and just see how they do in a week doing some low-level tasks at the company. And you pay them for that time. It's kind of like it's like an internship, except they get paid. So this week, take a hard look at what you're using and just this doesn't take a ton of time. Spend 30 minutes or an hour. I guarantee you will get more time back next week using the proper AI tools than you use putting this together. And it's very hard to build a policy until you actually know what's running in the background of your business. So take time this week and analyze how you're using AI in the organization, and tune in next week and subscribe to The Buck Stops Here so we can help you next week and understand how to roll it out to your entire organization, how to approach the teams, how to establish the governance rules and frameworks, and how to really supercharge your business with the right protective governance in place to let you go armed with the right tools and material you need in a world of AI. I want to thank everyone out there for listening and for tuning in this week. Again, I'm your host, David Maples. Go out there, do good work, and be awesome.